If you're wondering where can a conversion master's in psychology can lead you to, then this is the correct video for you. I've made a video previously as to studying a conversion master's in the UK, and I've received a lot of questions around that, so I decided to do this video to answer questions as to where can this conversion master's actually lead you. There's so many options, and this video will try to condensate all the different alternatives you can take after doing this master's degree. Just for those who haven't watched that video, I highly recommend you do that. But if you haven't, the summary of that video is basically that if you haven't studied a bachelor's in psychology and you just want to change careers into psychology, that is an option for you, studying this conversion course, which I just finished it last year, and I'm actually graduating in 4 days, my graduation ceremony, but I already finished the course in September last year. So digging into the video, let's start with the 11 most common core psychology professions that you can follow after doing this conversion master's. It doesn't mean that the psychology conversion masters will allow you to enter directly to these core professions. It just means, again, it's a stepping stone, a previous step. The first step for that is for entering one of these 11 psychology core professions. The first one I'm going to mention is academic psychology, research or teaching. So academics tend to have a PhD or a professional qualification in their specialist area. And then once qualified, academic psychologists often work in universities. That is, they can do research, they can teach, they can practice, or engage in any other scholarly activities, or a combination of all of the above. And a PhD can also be a route to research in other areas. So yes, if you're into research or teaching or other similar activities like this, like the academia, you can actually follow the PhD route. So the second one I'm going to mention is business, occupational, and organizational psychology. These 3 areas in psychology all focus on the application of psychological knowledge to understanding, researching, and informing work and business practice. So basically all of this use psychological theories in order to improve the well-being in the workplace. They focus on enhancing the effectiveness of the business, increasing the motivation amongst the people, amongst others. The third core psychology profession is one of the most known, which is clinical psychology. So what they do is they help people with an array of severe psychological conditions, working closely with psychiatry and mental health teams. Since it is a highly sought after profession, the competition for places to become a clinical psychologist, which means basically for the trainees that apply to the doctorate, or before that, which is the positions of assistant psychology, which is usually the position that helps you gain a bit of more expertise into becoming a clinical psychologist, is very, very fierce. So the fourth core psychology profession I'm going to talk about is coaching psychology. So they say it is a growth area in the discipline of psychology, and they use evidence-based approaches to study, understand, and deliver effective coaching. So what they do is they help people, communities, organizations to make effective and informed decisions in their working and personal lives in order to help them thrive and basically live their best life. That is the definition of coaching psychology. There are actually professionally trained coaching psychologists who are accredited by the BPS, or also the European Coaching and Mentoring Council, or the International Coaching Federation. So I personally think this coaching psychology route is very appealing to me, and you can gain registrations with these professional bodies to be able to practice it in a more evidence-based way. So the next psychological profession that is very also common is counseling and psychotherapy. So professionals in this area, even though they may have different approaches as to how they deliver or what type of therapy they use, they all work in talk-based helping roles with individuals, couples, and groups to improve well-being and tackle a wide variety of personal and interpersonal difficulties. So you can ask what's the difference with the clinical psychologist one. I would say it's much in the title. Clinical psychologists, you can mostly find them in healthcare settings, but rather counseling psychotherapists, they can treat all of individuals, not necessarily with severe psychological issues like the ones clinical psychologists work with, but rather couples, families, individuals that have problems, interpersonal difficulties amongst them, and these counselors can just help them tackle them using an approach which can differ from counselor to counselor, but they all, like I said, work in talk-based roles. And to be actually a counselor psychotherapist, you need to be registered with the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, or the BACP, and also you need suitable experience in order to be successful in these type of courses. I personally think that this core psychology profession of counseling and psychotherapy is also very interesting to consider. So the next one is counseling psychology. So I basically did this distinction between counseling and psychotherapy because there's two different core psychology professions according to my research. So counseling psychology, to be a counselor, you need to do a 3-year doctorate in the UK, which is BPS recognized, and these counselors or trainee counselors are trained to reduce distress and enhance well-being using specialist evidence practice. And usually they work with other health professionals to share and promote their skills and to enhance knowledge across disciplines. Also, candidates need to have ideally extensive experience of strongly related psychological work. So the 7th core psychology profession is educational psychology, which I have also made a video on how to become an educational psychology in the UK. Just bear in mind, when I mention these core psychology professions, I'm not really mentioning the entry requirements or everything, because if not, then probably this would be a very extensive video. But if you're actually more interested in understanding what are the entry requirements for all of the core psychology professions that I've mentioned, which some of them require doctorate, some of them require just a master's, some of them require a PG diploma, or others, just let me know and I can try and do a video on that. This educational psychology core profession is actually the one that I'm aiming at. Things can change in the future. I might do it, I might not, but as up until now, I really want to pursue this AP or educational psychology route. What they do is they basically work with teachers, parents, schools, and communities to provide evidence-based advice, support, and guidance in order to improve the emotional, social, interpersonal, and everything else well-being of the children and young people around them. So they basically help to assess areas of difficulty amongst these children, these young people, and tackle the challenges within these educational contexts. Just a brief pointer, in order to be an educational psychologist, you need to do a 3-year doctorate after completing either your bachelor's or your master's, conversion master's in psychology. So between those, you need also 1 year full-time experience with children and young people. But again, if you want more details around that, you can go and watch my video on how to become an EP in the UK. So the next psychology core profession that I'm going to mention is forensic psychology. I don't really know a lot about this core psychology profession, but what I've researched is that they can work in a range of areas across the criminal justice system to help understand criminal behavior and to support the management and treatment of those who have committed crime. So not really my area of interest, but it is a core psychology profession, so I had to mention it. So again, they can do the conversion masters instead of the undergrad, and then in order to be a forensic psychologist, they need to complete a master's in forensic psychologist, and then they need to follow 3 years of supervised practice or a further Health and Care Professions Council HCPC qualification. So yeah, if you're interested in analyzing criminal behavior, understanding it, and then actually treating patients who have committed crime, then I would say give this core psychology profession a go. So the next one I'm going to mention is health psychology. So health psychologists use psychology knowledge and interventions to improve the health and well-being of people. And they also perform practice and treatments in health settings and at population level. You could say similar as a clinical psychologist would, because they also are in health settings. So there is actually a bit of overlap between these two professions, although they both have their each different approach, which you can research more in detail. In order to become a health psychologist, you need, again, a conversion or an undergrad in psychology accredited by the BPS. Then you need to do a master's in health psychology, and then you need to do a doctorate in health psychology as well. So the route to become a health psychologist is actually long, but it's no different than educational psychology, counselor, or clinical psychologists. They all take various years. I don't want to say the exact amount because it will depend on you and how fast you gain your work experience towards getting a place on the doctorate, and it might be that you might not get a place on certain years and you need to apply to the next one. Anyways, there's so many extra, and also the funding part, there's so many factors that might affect your route into becoming a qualified psychologist in any of the mentioned core professions. Just before going to the next core profession, just saying that the health psychologist profession is regulated by the Health and Care Professions Council, HCPC. So the professions that the HCPC regulate are also some of the ones that I've already mentioned before, like educational psychologists, clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, and even occupational psychologists are also regulated with the HCPC, that is in the UK again. So the next core profession in psychology I'm going to mention is neuropsychology. So neuropsychology is a discipline that covers research, assessment, and rehabilitation of individuals whose lives are impacted by trauma and illness affecting their brain structure. Now, the journey to become a neuropsychologist is actually a bit longer, even than the ones that I've mentioned before. Because in order to become a neuropsychologist that is accredited by the BPS, you need to train via the clinical or the educational psychology route and then specialize in neuropsychology. Or what you can do is you can specialize as an academic, which was one of the first professions that I mentioned in this video. That is through PhD research work. So if you're into the brain, how it is affected and it's all connected when you've had a trauma, how the brain structure changes when you've had it, then I would say to give this neuropsychology route a go. And then finally, core psychology profession I'm going to mention is sport and exercise psychology. So this type of psychologists work across elite and non-elite sectors in education and with organizations to promote sport engagement, facilitate excellence in training and performance, and inform policy and practices using expert knowledge. These specialists in sports and exercise psychologists need to have undertaken a master's degree which is recognized by the British Association of Sports and Exercise Sciences, and then again be registered with the HCPC as the other core psychology professions that I mentioned. So with this, we've finished with the 11 most common psychology core professions that you can pursue after completing your conversion masters, or even if you've had an undergrad in psychology and you are thinking, well, what route should I take? And you are interested in the core professions. So there are various roles that are allied psychology professions in which you don't necessarily need to follow any of the 11 core psychology professions that I mentioned. You can just stay in the allied psychology profession and then build a career in that. So there are so many allied psychology professions that exist now. I am in one of them, but there's so many, and let me know if you would be interested in me doing a video of those. Some of them, so just so you have an idea, might be employment specialist working in a charity or non-for-profit with people with complex barriers and helping them get into work. Other can be assistant psychologists, which you basically are supervised by a qualified psychologist within a service. So there's also the learning and behavior specialist, that you can work in schools one-on-one with children and need a bit of more support, or student support worker as well. There's the mental health social worker. There's the one-on-one teaching assistant. There's just so many, and I won't stop to describe each of them because that would require me doing another video. Just let me know if these allied psychology professions is something that you would be interested in me perhaps expanding a bit more. These allied psychology professions are actually also great in order for you to get more experience, that work experience that you usually need, relevant work experience, in order to then apply to whatever further studies you are going to, that you basically need to be a qualified psychologist in whatever core profession from the ones that I've mentioned you choose to. So that's the end of today's video. I know there's so much information around psychology routes after a conversion. Let me know if you find this useful, and as always, thank you so much for watching my videos. And if you have more suggestions on new topics, let me know on my Instagram page, my psych journey abroad, or leaving a comment in today's video. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.